No other market research podcast earned recognition in 2019 and followed it up in 2020 in being named one of the very best in the marketing research field. So we're proud to welcome you to the one podcast that did earn that distinction. Research Business Daily Report not only is the one of which we speak, but it's known as the research industry's only daily research video report. So enjoy today's RBDR and our other regular reports, but then please lend your support for this research news video series, which you can do by visiting where you need to go on the screen. It's right in front of you, right here and now. I'm Bob Lederer, now in my 26th year as the respected voice in market research. As businesses take their first steps in the COVID ebbing world, it's certainly interesting to zero in on their office plans. Will central offices open for research companies? And will their remote workers return to work in that location, more or less most of the time? It's an important business decision on multiple levels. We've already read about Ipsos relocating their Chicago office into smaller quarters, and that's just one example. But today we present the perspective of a well-established research agency that made the decision to go remote several years before COVID. In fact, we asked Socratic Technologies President Michael Gray to address the situation, particularly giving us an explanation of why his agency made the decision to transition to basically remote offices 2 years ago, long before anyone heard of the coronavirus. And here's what Michael told us.
We had offices in both San Francisco and Chicago, and we added that office in Chicago so that we could expand our reach and our talent pool to a location that had a lot of research companies and a lot of research resources. But then, around 2017, we had a very large office in San Francisco, and we were winding down our staff in Chicago, and we were continuing to try and expand our pool of resources and gather talent from a wider range. And people were coming into the office a couple of days a week, but not others, and it seemed to be working pretty well. So eventually we shut down our Chicago office and continued to have employees there, but had them working remotely. We only had San Francisco. And again, the cost of the San Francisco footprint became pretty extreme. So we sublet that out in 2017 and moved everybody remote. I think the advent of the WeWork spaces probably helped kindle the idea and doing it for ourselves, but we never actually executed on using those. But it kind of was the concept of people working remotely some days and not remotely others, and having a space for people to work and come in and collaborate when they need to, but to not to have there constantly and to bear that expense. So we still have a small footprint in San Francisco. It's just for our developers to come in and work, but since the pandemic began, that's really just been a storage space. The only thing that COVID did was really help us to accelerate closing our last footprint in San Francisco and the small office we have there. We still have it now, but we'll be vacating that space within a few months. We have our usual Monday morning operations meetings, and then our research leads meetings, and we try to incorporate development and growth aspects in those meetings, aside from all the details of project work. One of the things we have to worry about with people working from home is that it's too easy to not leave your desk or to go back to your desk to just handle something and actually work too much. I think we've all probably seen that, especially over the last few years. So we try to reinforce that every week to make sure that people understand it's important to take time for themselves. And we also try to measure what people are working on, how much is bandwidth they have, and who may be available to help pick up some of that and balance the load on those days. Everything's on a shared server, and we can monitor what's happening on project deliverables. So it's easy to see when people are not working or not getting things done. And honestly, that I can't even recall when we had to step in on somebody who wasn't working. It's more often the case that we have to monitor when people are working too much, and those times come, and then we either expand staff or shift resources around one way or another to try and make sure that people can remain healthy and happy. I think the same skill sets apply when we're looking and recruiting people. we're still looking for people who can perform well in front of a client, consult well with a client, the skills to be able to consult, understanding research and the problem solving that's required. On the technical side, it's very, the same skill set. The folks that need to do the programming and the development for our applications, it's all the same. Definitely willing to talk to people. Yeah, my advice would be if you're managing your work and your people properly anyway, the fears you might have about taking the leap and doing this aren't warranted, because you can see it in the work whether they're performing or not. Now, I think it's probably some things to be wary of when you reach a certain scale. When you have multiple levels of management, you might run into some more roadblocks. Might be easier for people to quote unquote hide and not perform. But yeah, I think those are challenges that can be overcome.
That wraps up today's Research Business Daily Report. Now, we're always thankful for the views of any RBDR viewer, and each day we bring to that viewer, you, a news insight, an insight, or a commentary that you're not going to find anywhere else. And after digesting the content, for instance, from today's video, and as you absorb other RBDR reports, we hope that you'll appreciate us sufficiently to consider becoming an RBDR Patreon supporter. How do you do that? At RBDR's exclusive crowdfunding platform at patreon.com/RBDR. We hope that you have a good research day and that we'll see you back here tomorrow. And until then, please stay safe.